Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss 101 Dalmatians, the 1996 version, starring Glenn Close, Jeff Daniels, Jolie Richardson, Joan Plowright, Hugh Laurie, and Mark Williams, directed by Stephen Herrick. Now, I do remember going to theaters for this thing long ago, like very long time ago. And I remember being very young and not understanding what in the world was happening. But let's see how it goes this time. Let's get into this movie. We open in London where we meet Pongo the dog walking his master up to get his shower and coffee ready, and his master Roger, played by Jeff Daniels, wakes up while they do go to the park and they have a meeting with Roger as Roger is a video game designer, which is a change I'm not a fan of. Anita, played by Jolie Richardson, works for at a fashion company where it's owned by Cruella DeVille, played by Glenn Close, as they have a girl-on-girl chat about her how great her work is. And Glenn Close's performance as Cruella DeVille is the best thing about this movie, as the other actors are not as good as here as she is, in my opinion. One day at the park, Pongo spots Anita's dog Perdita while riding a bicycle at the park, and he runs over Anita, or after Anita, excuse me, and Perdita until they meet up at the park while Pongo watches and Roger captures Perdita briefly, and Roger and Anita meet for the first time, and Pongo has a connection with Perdita, and that they and they and that is probably the second best thing about the movie, but this plot is very familiar as it feels unoriginal. Bongo and Perdita run after each other as at first Roger falls in a pond early on, and next thing you know, Anita is dropped into the pond, and after the day they first met, Roger proposes marriage to Anita, and the Dalmatians are in love, which with each other, as well as I've got a problem with that. And Frozen tells us about that as they get married after they first met each other, the very first day. It doesn't work like that at all. Frozen tells it better than this movie does. We meet Jasper, played by Hugh Laurie, and Horace, played by Mark Williams, as they meet a guy named Skinner, and our Cruella DeVille's assistants and people are afraid of Cruella as she acts scary, but the Hugh Laurie and Mark Williams plays but the way Hugh Laurie and Mark Williams play such dimwits pretty idiotically, as Hugh Laurie goes on to be a serious TV actor while Mark Williams has Harry Potter in his future. Roger and Anita has a nanny who's played by Joan Plowright, who figure out Perdita is pregnant with puppies, and it was kind of funny when Anita falls down to the floor. I'm going to be honest here, this plot isn't as good as the original plot because it's the same thing. Cruella visits Anita at their place with Roger as she tells her about Anita having a baby as well as puppies. And Pongo and Perdita believe there's something wrong with Cruella, and I get that from the original animated film, as I don't need to told to me a second time. And this is a real problem with the movie in general, as Perdita gives birth to 15 puppies, and admittedly they are adorable while laying with Perdita as Cruella arrives and wants the puppies, as they're not for sale, and she runs out rather brutally. Months later, they watch the TV as the Aristocats and Homeward Bound are on there, which are Disney properties, as it's Christmas time, and Roger and Anita and Nanny give the puppies collars while Jasper and Horace go into the house after the puppies, as they kidnap them, and a bulldog notices it, as it is smart to know they've got puppies in the bag, and dogs are smart that way, believe it or not. And I know exactly where this movie is going, which bothers me right off the bat. So far, Cruella has 99 Dalmatians, which sounds vaguely familiar, and That's also from the original movie, including the original puppies that we got from earlier ago. And there's no other way to tell the story, so why remake it in the first place? Is my question. Pongo calls over all around the dogs of London to find their puppies, as the other animals send messages around the world, and the animals have no dialogue in this movie as they describe Jasper and Horace. And one dog tells Pongo and Perdita to get out of the house as they learn where the puppies are at. And I'm having a hard time connecting with these characters except for Cruella and the Dalmatians, as Jasper and Horace talk about dead puppies, and one dog that followed them talks to a mouse about the puppies as the dog sees 99 Dalmatian puppies, and all this isn't clicking with me as well as the original. Cruella calls Skinner to tell him to kill the puppies that very night they captured them. And Anita and Roger learn Cruella is going to kill the puppies for coats as Pongo and Perdita gets to Jasper and Horace's hideout while the other animals set up traps for them. As they're about to kill the puppies, a little bird knocks on the door to distract the dimwits as the Dalmatians escape as Lucky sticks behind. And I thought Lucky should get out of there as he urinates on a magazine with the face of Cruella de Vil, which was kind of clever. And as they go down the well, the CGI looked pretty bad at that moment. And I'm like, is this the best they can do? Because it's not much. Well, I mean, admittedly, it was the 1990s, but as the puppies escape, they get the two dimwits down as one is cold and another one kisses a statued deer. And Cruella shows up to the hideout and goes after the puppies with the skunk in her car, as Jasper and Horace's car doesn't turn on. And how terribly cliche for a Disney remake. To laugh at some good actors, the Dalmatians hide underneath some sheep, and Lucky is left behind as Skinner shows up and the dog bites Skinner and the booty, which is again so cliche, and Jasper and Horace's truck catches on fire, which is a very silly move. This is a very silly remake of a classic Disney film, animated film, I'll say. Pongo and Perdita does find their 15 puppies plus more Dalmatians dogs, while Cruella tries to find where they're at as she approaches the barn where the puppies are at. And all of this is very bad writing, as it is a remake of a Disney classic from 1961. Cruella gets a pig on top of her and dumped in some pile of pig slime and stuck in mud as Jasper and Horace's privates gets electrocuted by an electric fence, and they get arrested with Skinner as they find out a way to make clever ways to make good actors look absolutely horrible, as this movie is a horrible Disney remake. Eventually the police finds the Dalmatians, including Pongo and Perdita, as Lucky catches up with them at the police cars, as they have a total of 101 Dalmatians, while Cruella is ruined and a skunk sprays in her face, and the 101 Dalmatians get in Roger and Anita's place, as Roger's new video game is approved, as they have a new baby in the new house and a new life, and the climax is rather predictable by the end of the day. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 3.9 out of 10. Other than the performances of Glenn Close and the Dalmatians, I don't really think the other actors are good in their parts, as their performances are very weak. They tried their hardest to make good actors look absolutely horrible, and it gets old and cliche after a while. This is almost the same plot as the original movie from 1961, as this is perhaps the worst Disney remake I've seen, which really makes me worried about the upcoming Cruella, but we'll see in a few weeks. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next time we'll be back with 102 Dalmatians. And until then, Cruella de Vil.